Football Outsiders live stream, not on a Thursday, but today it's for Friday, April 29th, 2022. Hello to everybody watching us on Twitch and YouTube right now. Hello to everybody listening after the fact on the Football Outsiders Podcast Network. We are here to recap the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft. Please feel free to ask us questions live during the show. We will answer them. Please remember to like and subscribe to the show. Perhaps you are listening to us specifically because this is the draft podcast / live stream and you don't listen normally, in which case you should definitely listen on an every week basis. Normally we're doing this Thursdays, and you should definitely like and subscribe to the show. My guests today to talk about the first round of the draft are, first of all, our Football Outsiders draft experts, Mike Tanier and Derrik Klassen. And then Benjamin Robinson from Mocking the Drafts, who is here to tell us how it went. And how it went was actually less surprising than you might think. The draft was surprising, I think, only in compared to where players may have been ranked like 3 months ago. Yeah. And then maybe a little bit of the order and the veteran trades, which we'll get to. The most surprising part of the draft was not any pick. It was the veteran trades. But 30 out of 32 players in the Grinding the Mocks final 32, 30 players went in the first round.
And the other two were Cole Strange.
Well, the opposite, right? The two who dropped. Who are the two who dropped into the second round? I'm assuming one is Malik Willis.
So one is Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty, because of there's only one quarterback drafted. I expect that to be many more today. And the other is Andrew Booth, cornerback from Clemson, who it seems has quite a good amount of medical issues. There were teams like the Cincinnati Bengals at the end of the first round, or even the Minnesota Vikings, who could have drafted him as well. But yeah, in my final Football Outsiders mock draft, I had him falling out of the first round too. But the draft was way more chalk than we thought. I saw more than a few tweets out there saying this draft is the most unpredictable it's been in years. And in fact, it was more predictable than last year's draft, which was also pretty predictable in terms of the first round. So I think we need to retire that tired phrase and lean into some data.
Yeah, I guess the most unpredictable thing was, hey, nobody took quarterbacks, but then we were really only expecting 2 quarterbacks to go in the first round, and instead one went, and we knew Pittsburgh was going to take one. So the only really surprising thing with that is that some other team didn't take Malik Willis. But other than that, who were the 2 players who climbed into the first round who were unexpected? One was obviously Cole Strange, the guard that the Patriots took.
And the other is Lewis Seen, safety from Georgia, who went 32 to the Minnesota Vikings, who I had in my mock draft at Football Outsiders going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But, he was the 34th ranked player on the Grinding the Mocks board. So we did really well last night. I'm very pleased with the results. There was no kind of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah situation that we had last year where everyone's talking, oh my God, how is this happening? We knew Andrew Booth had that issue. And so it wasn't as big a surprise when that happened. But for me, I had expected 25 or 26 players from my top 32 to be in the top 32. So to have 30 is a huge, huge win for me.
Useful Title asks if we saw Sean McVay's reaction to the Strange pick. Yes, for those who have not seen the video, the Rams were giving a sort of silly press conference where they basically just got on stage and said, hey, remember how we had no picks in the first round? Right. Well, guess what? We didn't take anyone with the picks we didn't have. And they asked about Cole Strange, and McVay basically said, we were totally looking at him in the 4th round.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm torn between that's a great gag and Bill Belichick just holding up the ring and say, yeah, Sean, come see me in the Super Bowl again, big guy. Come talk
to
me.
Well, I mean, Sean's got one of his own now. So, yeah. I mean, Belichick has more, but McVay has the more recent one.
Right. True.
I think the other sort of the surprise thing is that's not a surprise. Like we talked about, unpredictable. Okay, yeah, unpredictable compared to 3 months ago. But at this point, we all basically knew that Travon Walker was going to be the first pick.
Right.
So for those people who have not had a chance to hear your impressions of that pick, Mike and Derrik, give your thoughts on Travon Walker as the number 1 pick.
Hated it. You go, Derek.
I did not hate it as much in this class. So for me, Travon Walker was more of like in a normal class, this is the type of player that goes in like the late teens or the early 20s because he's a super athletic, has a really interesting profile, but he's not going to be all the way there as an edge rusher right now. The thing is, Aiden Hutchinson to me is not a typical number 1 overall pick. It didn't seem like they were going to go one of the tackles, so you could mark that off the board. And for whatever reason, it seemed like they weren't going to go Thibodeau, even though I thought Thibodeau was the best player in the class. So given the situation they kind of put themselves in, I didn't hate it. It's just it's a much riskier pick than the typical number 1 overall pick.
Before we went on, we were talking about the Raiders not picking up the 5th-year option, and Clelin Ferrell came up. And we all agree Clelin Ferrell was completely overdrafted, but here was this guy who was trait-C, who was a good run defender, who we always heard how good his run defense is when Gruden was trying to defend them and all. I can't shake the idea that Travon Walker is the Clelin Ferrell that we all talked ourselves into, or we heard the insiders talk about him, and he rose up the board on that. And next thing you know, Balky loved him. That we're going to be, again, 2 or 3 years from now, looking at this 5.5 sack season and talking about, but look how he set the edge on that one running play that one time. And that's not what you talk about with your 1st overall pick or your 4th overall pick in Ferrell's case. And that's not the kind of value you want with that pick.
I understand that Walker was number 1 in our Saxier projections. Right. So it's weird for me to say that I would not have taken him number 1 overall. But the difference between him and Hutchinson and Thibodeau was less than 1 sack in 5 years. And when you combine that with the film study and with the stats that we don't include in Saxier because we don't have enough years of them, right, but the stats that Sports Info Solutions and Pro Football Focus have started to keep over the last 3 or 4 years, like pass rush get-off numbers and pressures as opposed to just sacks and win rate. When you look at all that stuff, the production is so much lower for him than it is for Hutchinson or Thibodeau that I feel like that makes up the difference of the 1 sack over 5 years. Like, I mean, if everything works for the Jaguars with this pick, given that we all thought that Hutchinson in particular, I think, is a very high floor kind of guy, like, if it all works out, he's slightly better than Hutchinson and Thibodeau.
Right. If it works out spectacularly, he's Cam Jordan, I guess. I mean, is that a good place to go with that? Which would be a heck of a player, certainly. But that's the absolute max of the max.
Yeah, it's probably something like Cam Jordan. The one thing I would say that, like, I don't know if it complicates Walker's profile necessarily, but like he actually can drop out and play in coverage, which I think is really important with as much just the way the defenses are moving now, where they're more willing to play these bigger outside linebackers who can drop a little bit. So I don't know how much they're going to actually make him do that, but I think it is something that like could theoretically, in the best version of Walker, make him a really unique force up front, which is, again, I don't really trust the Jaguars to actually get that out of any player, let alone someone as raw as Walker, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, let's be honest. You do not take edge rushers number 1 overall so you can drop them in.
So you can drop, right.
Ask
you want him to rush the passer.
Ask any Denver fan how they felt whenever Von Miller dropped into coverage.
Yes. You could cover the slot receiver for a few downs, the Mike Patton defense. I can't wait to see it.
What do we think? Obviously, look, the biggest surprise, I don't know if the biggest surprise was Cole Strange or the veteran trades, but I honestly think, given the importance of the players, the veteran trades were the biggest surprise. So what is everybody's take on A.J. Brown and Marquise Brown, all the Browns, getting traded? I think the biggest surprise for me is it's clear that the Marquise Brown trade was actually in the works for a while because they had actually flown Marquise Brown out to Phoenix, and they didn't announce it until he could appear at the Arizona draft party. But when the Eagles trade took place right afterwards, it looked like the Eagles had completely stolen A.J. Brown from the Titans.
Right.
Or more accurately, the Cardinals had given up too much. Not that the Eagles stole A.J. Brown, but that compared to that trade, the Cardinals gave up too much for Marquise Brown.
That's very Cardinals thing to do, is to give up more than they really need to for another wide receiver for their Madden team, which is, I think, is what they're assembling out there in Arizona. But the details of the, Travon Davenport posted a lot of the details, A.J. Brown on the Titans side of things. And they were coming in at about $20 million a year in a world where, again, I wasn't $28 million a year is about what the super high guys are. And you can say, well, Brown should come in a tier below Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. I'd agree. Well, $8 million a year is not a tier.
No, he came in a tier below. He's now the 4th highest paid wide receiver in the game. That's a tier below.
At 25, not 20. And so I don't know what the Titans were thinking there. Here in Eagles country, folks are happy. I'm excited to see him. I'll look at the cap numbers down the road. They're probably kind of ugly. But right now, you got to develop Jalen Hurts. You got a guy who you can bring in, plug and play. You're not worried about the Jameson Williams injuries. You're not worried about these other things. So it's a good move for the Eagles as they try to project forward for the next year or two.
I mean, I think I know what the Titans were thinking in that they have a lot of cap costs. And the idea is that the hope is that Treylon Burks can be 80 or 85% of the player that A.J. Brown is for a lot less money. The problem is, I think Brian Knowles put up the Family Guy meme where Peter Griffin says, sure, the boat is a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. I mean, that's sort of the idea with Treylon Burks, is that in the best case scenario, he's A.J. Brown. The difference between that and the meme is that Treylon Burks comes with a lot less money.
Exactly. I mean, there was a lot of talk about how Treylon Burks was kind of very similar in terms of, his style of play to A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel. This is definitely, I think you said, it's the price that you pay when you sign Ryan Tannehill, who we believe can be like probably at his best above average quarterback, like in the Derek Carr realm at best. Yeah.
And Derrick Henry, they're paying a running
Derrick
back.
And they're
Henry,
paying
yeah.
Derrick Henry, Bud Dupree, Harold Landry. The birds come to roost. I mean, and they paid Julio Jones a bunch of money to not play for them now. So sometimes these are the casualties of poor decision-making from the past. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think people have been talking more and more and more about how, there's a lot of wide receivers in this draft class that are good players, and you can replace these kind of older, more established players with similar players who are cheaper. And so I called it in my mock draft the other day, the Christian Kirk effect, when I was not really my mock draft, my risers and fallers article when I was talking about Jameson Williams. But yeah, I mean, the wide receivers went early and often in this draft, and I think that's a reaction to some of the market forces that are out there.
Yeah. And Grouchish is talking about, historically decent front office, Ravens, Chiefs, Packers, and the Titans have no problem trading away elite receivers. They have a problem trading away elite wide receivers. They're not happy with what they're doing. This was not the Chiefs marching out there saying, we see him marking in this, inefficiently, let's trade Tyreek Hill, or the Titans saying, A.J. Brown, we can get a guy like him in the draft. This was Devontae Adams signed a big deal. Tyreek Hill was in the market for a deal and said, I want that or nothing. The Chiefs were strained, maxed out. They had to move. The Titans were like, A.J. Brown's like, I want something almost like that. The Titans were like, we're strained. We have to move. So what you're seeing is very good franchises who are maxed out against the cap having to trade away a resource, not necessarily them saying, this is like 4D chess, and we just know we can replace a guy with a guy. I think most of these teams would be happy to have done it differently if the Packers hadn't started things off.
There's a little bit of an argument that Brown are less important to the Ravens and Titans because they run such run-first offensive schemes. The awkward part of that is so do the Eagles, or at least so did the Eagles last year.
Yeah.
The Marquise Brown thing is sort of based on the idea that he will be better in Arizona, that the scheme will fit him better, and that he will work better with Kyler Murray, and they will sort of unlock his speed in a way that it was not unlocked with Baltimore. I don't know. Mike's facial expressions are suggesting that he does not buy that argument.
What?
The college teammate argument.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the narrative.
I'm not even sure how to respond to that. First of all, he's going to be the number 3 target there?
I mean, I think he's either 2 or 3.
Rondale
Moore, right?
With
Rondale
this money,
Moore
number
is the
2.
slot guy.
Number 2.
AJ Green bumps down now. I think AJ Green, it's now wide receiver 4, and this is probably his last season.
Right. And you can say, well, the Greg Roman scheme can be very tough on a wide receiver, and I agree with that 100%. Here's what's going to be happening. A.J. Green is going to do nothing but run up the right sidelines and catch sideline routes because that's all he'll be asked to do. Everything will be funneled behind to DeAndre Hopkins. And Marquise Brown's just going to do the Rondale Moore stuff. So it's not like this is some brilliant scheme. It's what they always do. I'm sure it'll be better than Rondale Moore, but I'm not sure. There's only so many targets to go around. They still have Kyler Murray, who they're not totally satisfied with, and the Cardinals haven't solved a lot of other problems at other places on the field. I don't get it.
I'm probably projecting here, and this might be a little reckless. I think he probably just didn't like blocking. I mean, that's something he's probably not going to have to do nearly as much in Arizona, because a lot of Arizona's run game, the advantages that they're getting are they're just spreading you out and they're using Kyler Murray's legs as like an extra number. Whereas Baltimore, a lot of what they're doing is they're condensing everything. They're mucking everything up with all their extra tight end bodies and receivers and trying to get blockers, kind of like what the Rams do in a different package. So I think it's entirely possible. I think he even mentioned he didn't like the run first offense. So I think it's entirely possible he just wanted to be in an offense that was more spread to pass, wide open, that sort of deal. And then also, like Benjamin said, with his college quarterback again. So that probably doesn't hurt.
I would like to give him props for not turning this into a big media circus.
Good.
Whereas a lot of the other wide receivers, everybody had to whine and spread rumors. Like Hollywood Brown just did this on the sly.
And Debo being super cryptic and not telling anybody anything, and then going on Instagram once in a while. There's a lot of stories out there, but no one knows the truth. Of course not, because you started the stories and didn't tell us anything. Of course that's what's happening. You made that happen.
I was surprised at the price because, I can't believe that they're kind of similar prices in terms of the draft compensation. And A.J. Brown is a much more established wide receiver than Marquise Brown is, much more valuable. So I was surprised when I heard about the Hollywood Brown trade, and I was even more surprised when I heard about the A.J. Brown trade. And so to me, that was the most confusing part. The Eagles still have a lot of draft capital for this year and next year. Their trade ups, I was a little confused because it's kind of a little bit against the grain of what they normally did, but they traded up for Jordan Davis and they made this trade for A.J. Brown. And so Jordan Davis is a special player. A.J. Brown is a special player. So they came away with two players, and luckily they have a lot of draft compensation, and they've turned this Carson Wentz trade into a bunch of different draft capital that they've now turned into some established good players. Mm-hmm. So I think as an Eagles fan, you have to be excited. And, Jalen Hurts, speaking of the friends, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown went to high school together. They know each other from way back when. So, we're pairing friends with friends, and hopefully everyone gets along. But I think this goes a long way to, helping with the evaluation of Jalen Hurts, because next year the Eagles have to make a decision. Is this the guy we want to stick with? Is this a guy we want to jettison and perhaps use our draft capital that we've accumulated to get another quarterback? So it's I think it was good for them to get an established player who we know can be good, so that you can make that evaluation of Hurts even more certain.
Yeah, agreed.
Patrick Seeley asks the Ravens to please draft big wide receivers who can block, and then suggests N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry can be yours for the low price of a 7th round pick
in 2028.
He is available, very, very available. We somebody earlier had posted something about me drinking the Kool-Aid with state of denial about Bill Belichick's mistakes on draft night. Trust me, I am not in any kind of state.
I think Aaron has been very vocal about some of the mistakes he's made before.
Yeah,
it just keeps working out anyway.
We'll get into this in a second here, but I'm not a big fan of the let's draft guys 3 rounds before their generally accepted draft position strategy. Right. It didn't work for the Raiders, and it hasn't worked for the Patriots either. Very well. So I had everybody pick a winner and a loser of who they thought did a really good job last night and who did an iffy job. So let's start with the first round winners. And Benjamin, we will start with you. Who is your first round winner?
I had the Kansas City Chiefs as my first round winner, and that's just based solely on my grinding the mocks draft capital over expected metric. So the 2 players that the Kansas City Chiefs drafted were Washington cornerback Trent McDuffie, who I thought would go a bit earlier, and they traded up with the Patriots. So that was one of the things I agree the Patriots did well to get more draft capital later on in the draft. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. They'll still have players that they probably like later on. It turns out that, they could have had we'll talk more about that later. But then I also really liked their second draft pick, which was Purdue edge rusher George Karlaftis. And so to me, everyone had their eyes set on them to get a wide receiver. They must have seen what everyone else saw, which is that the wide receivers that they were potentially in the market for went much earlier than expected. And so they decided to kind of, hey, we can fill in with these other players that are really good that have fallen down the boards. Like I said, Trent McDuffie was my third cornerback. He ended up going way later after all the other cornerbacks did. But I thought that was really prudent. And then Karlaftis, had a kind of interesting draft process. He was kind of one of my big followers after the combine, kind of stabilized like mid-late. I think Arizona was a viable destination for him. I had him as 31 to the Bengals, so he almost made it to the Bengals. I thought that would have been lovely for them. But Frank Clark is, on the way out in terms of contract and hasn't been as productive. Karlaftis, proven college production, pretty athletic, tested well enough at his pro day. Not as flexible, shorter arms, but still a solid player. I think can play into the pass rush for this year. So
I had Mike Dana on our expected starting lineups list. I had Mike Dana as their other defensive end opposite Frank Clark. So this is an upgrade.
Definitely.
Yeah, I loved the Karlaftis pick. I think it was actually my favorite pick of the entire evening. To me, he's just a top 10 player. He's so explosive for a guy his size. And I think truthfully, with as much as they liked Melvin Ingram last year and what some of the stuff they were able to do with him, I really like Karlaftis kind of slotting into that style of role. And then obviously, he's a lot younger and more explosive than current Melvin Ingram. So I just love the fit. And then McDuffie too, I wasn't as familiar with McDuffie. I didn't watch him quite as much as I did Karlaftis, but it just makes so much sense for what they do schematically.
Yeah, I liked it. Remember at wide receiver, they did bring Juju in. Scott Spratt was here. He was lobbying to get Juju over to Carolina for some of that great USC action. Temple Owls are everywhere, Scott. And they brought in Valdez Scantling, so they do have some things in Kansas City, so they could address some other needs in the first round.
Derrik, your winner from the first round of the draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I went with the Baltimore Ravens. Kyle Hamilton, before he ran his 40, some people thought that he might be just the best football player in the class. So it makes a lot of sense that somehow that guy would fall to the Ravens because it seems like that happens every time. But I really like the pairing of Hamilton with Marcus Williams at safety because Hamilton is a guy, he can kind of do a little bit of everything, but he's really good playing like a split half, being able to, get depth while also being able to come forward, play the run, play screens, tackle, all that jazz. And then he covers fairly well. He can match up with tight ends. He can handle running backs out of the backfield and stuff. So I think him in that Mike McDonald defense with Marcus Williams being able to center field is an unbelievable pairing. And then they also get Tyler Linderbaum, another guy who before the combine seemed like he was going to go a lot higher than he obviously did. Just kind of another Ravens pick where they just get a very good football player to fall to them. I think they had issues along the offensive line at most spots last year. And so to be able to get Linderbaum in there, I think makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, the only reason they weren't my winners is because they had to give up Marquise Brown to get some of this, but I still love what they did.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a good debate about the quality of players versus positional value, because you can very much argue that a quality of player-wise, that the Ravens might have gotten 2 of top 10 players,
right? But
they got them at less important positions as far as position value. But I think it ends up working out well for them. They definitely needed the center. I mean, they had safeties, but Hamilton sets them up there for years and years. So, I like what the Ravens did as well.
It's in contrast to what the Giants did, who ended up with 2 of the best players in the draft at some of the most important positions outside of quarterback. So,
that gets us to Mike's first round winner. Mike's first round winner was
the G-Men, the mighty Giants, saying good things about a Giants draft. We're in uncharted territory. We're through the looking glass here, people. And Benjamin brought it up right here where you bring in Thibodeau and Sauce Gardner. And the real winners were
Thibodeau
the guys.
Neal, you mean?
Evan Neal.
Evan Neal, excuse me. I'm sorry, I got the Jets guys mixed in there. You know what you got me thrown off there? It was the back pages of all those tabloids where they said things like duck sauce because they had to put them all together. But yeah, you have Evan Neal, exactly, and Thibodeau, and you're bringing in possibly the best player, possibly the best player on both sides of the ball at tackle, at edge rusher in those positions. And this was a team that I think was 31st in defensive adjusted line yards, 31st in offensive adjusted line yards, very low in sack rate. They need these guys, and they sit and they fall to them. So instant upgrades, easy peasy on both sides of the ball, and you can start the process of rebuilding this team from the trenches out.
It's interesting. The Giants have said, I think they're going to start Neal at right tackle because they have the guy, Andrew Thomas. Is that who it is? They picked a couple years ago at left tackle. I don't know how long that'll last or if they'll switch at some point, but
I truthfully think Thomas has kind of come on. You know, he was really, really bad when he got drafted. Like, he was horrendous.
He was really, really bad as a rookie.
Yeah, as a rookie, he was not good. But I think he actually kind of turned it on last year. You know, Neal probably is a better prospect, but I don't know if they can get away with both of those guys at the bookend. I think that's really good for them.
Yeah, he can play right. Neal can play right, I think, as a rookie. It'll be the same thing. Oh my God, the adjustment the first couple of weeks of camp, and then by September he's playing at a pretty high level.
Well, Neal also already played right in college, so that shouldn't even be that much
and guard
for him. And guard, yeah, he can pretty much do whatever they want.
Speaking of the New York tabloids, my winner is the New York Jets. Normally, I'm not a big fan of trading up, but I think that, and we're going to learn when I pick my loser. But the Jets moving from 35 to 26, I feel like they didn't give away too much. They gave away a 5th round pick, and they moved down from 69 to 101. But I feel like that was a more reasonable trade up, and they filled needs.
Yes.
Like, I don't think their wide receiver need was as bad as some people seem to feel that it was, but Garrett Wilson is a really top wide receiver from this draft. Absolutely needed a cornerback. Sauce Gardner is a fantastic pick. And they really, really, really have needed an edge rusher for years and years and years. And they ended up with a guy who, you know, if you believe what Charles Robinson from Yahoo was saying, he said he was talking to people in front offices and that the front offices didn't have Jermaine Johnson anywhere near as high as the outside media did, but he still looks like a pretty good value at 26. So I think to pick up the 3 first rounders, look, hopefully it works out well for them. And we're not talking in 4 years about how the Jets didn't pick up the 5th year option on any of their first rounders. But I think that that's a really good value and need combined draft for the Jets.
Right.
I agree. And like the Johnson trade up in particular they didn't really give up a whole lot to get to 26, I think it was. And then also, at least in my opinion, Johnson and then Arnold Ebiketie, who hasn't been drafted yet, are like the last 2 of that tier of edge rusher. Yeah. So I kind of get them wanting to go up and make sure that they could get that guy before before both potentially came off the board.
Karlaftis was still available too, so they were sort of the last
right.
of that. Right. They could have taken Karlaftis instead of Johnson, but they definitely wanted one of those guys, and they got the one they wanted, and they didn't really give up that much to do.
No.
Johnson is an older player, I will say. There were a mix of players who were on the older side of things, including Cole Strange, who's 24. But yeah, Johnson has been around. You know, he started off at junior college and then went to Georgia and then went from Georgia to Florida State. And so he was at the Senior Bowl. So yeah, that's the main thing I would say that was kind of a little bit of a nick was that, Johnson's good. He's just 23.
Right.
Speaking of the Giants, by the way, Scott Spratt points out Andrew Thomas, according to the SIS charting, 6.8% blown block rate as a rookie, 2.5% last year. So there's your coming on in his second year, staying at left tackle with Evan Neal at right tackle. Okay, let's pick losers from the first round, and we'll start with Benjamin. Benjamin's loser from the first round is
the New England Patriots. I mean, I think I had to. So like I said, I really liked their draft last year. I thought it was quite good. Mac Jones, and then they ended up with Christian Barmore in the second. I liked it. This year, Cole Strange is a top 5 reach in the grinding the mocks era when it comes to my draft capital over expected metrics. And so, number 1 was, Clelin Ferrell, who we talked about. But, this is a top 5. He was, I think, in the early 3rd round or so, in my early mid-3rd round in my data. And so this is kind of corroborated as well by some of the, for example, the Arif Hassan athletic consensus big boards out there. This is a massive reach. Like we said, I mean, it's even confirmed by the Rams that they thought he might be available in the 3rd or 4th round. And I think that was fair. I additionally just said he's 24 years old. So he's on the older side from a lower level of competition. He was at UT Chattanooga. Even the teams that have done this strategy like really well, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Ali Marpet, he's not a guy you normally think of, and then Alex Kappa, they drafted those guys much later. But I think that's the blueprint they see, and I can understand it, but value-wise, I can't get along with it. Like I said, top 5 reach in the grinding the mucks era when it comes to draft capital over expected. Just burning that draft capital after making that trade with the Chiefs to get extra picks later on.
They're trying to make this Logan Mankins. Logan Mankins was similar. I think Logan Mankins was a little older, although not. I mean, Cole Strange was like a 6th-year senior because of COVID. And Mankins also was not expected to go in the 1st round, and they took him at the end of the 1st round. And so in that way, I think they're trying to make that similar. But I believe in Belichick's ability to identify talent. I mean, I don't know if it's that much better than anyone else's. I mean, we know all the studies have shown it is very hard to show that anybody consistently beats the average as far as the draft. But, look, he's done a good job identifying talent in the past. I don't think he's good. And he's good at trading down. I'm a big fan of the trading down. But he just has this habit of doing what the Raiders have also done for years, which is drafting guys way earlier than expected. And I just think they could have taken someone else like Nakobe Dean, and there's a 90 to 95% chance that Cole Strange would have still been there at 54. And I know that the Patriots have said, Belichick said in his press conference, he doesn't believe that's the case.
Right.
He did this because he thought someone was going to take Strange within a few picks. So
Let them do that. Let them do that.
Let them, right.
I mean, it's also hard. It's hard to say how much of the success of some of these picks that they've made in the past is directly related to having Tom freaking Brady on your team as well. And we saw in the offseason, was it last year, where they went ham because of all the bad selections they'd made on the roster.
Right.
And the free agency moves they made last year weren't even that good. So, I mean, when you miss in the draft, when they've done what they've done over the years, having that elite quarterback can paper over some of the inconsistencies.
Yeah, I mean, having
but
Tom
over time,
Brady
it doesn't work.
Doesn't lead to you doing things like finding J.C. Jackson as an undrafted free agent. But when the Patriots have done this, when they've drafted guys 2 or 3 rounds before their generally accepted position, it generally has not worked well. Like Tavon Wilson is the example that I'm thinking of, where he just didn't live up to the 2nd round pick. Jordan Richards didn't live up to the 2nd round pick. They've done this before where they've taken guys 2 or 3 rounds too early, and they don't tend to live up to that position.
Cole Strange was 3rd team all FCS. 3rd team all FCS All-American. How can you doubt this?
Patrick Seeley mentions Kyle Duggar. I think Kyle Duggar was also drafted a little bit before people expected, and he has so far been successful. But not this much before. Duggar was a 2nd rounder who was thought to be a 3rd. This is a 1st rounder who was thought to be
I brought this up too because Jim Nagy had tweeted about it and said, hey, look, Kyle Duggar, and I looked up in my data, Kyle Duggar was expected to go at the end of the 2nd round, early 3rd round. And instead, he went at the beginning of the 2nd round. Not as big of a reach at all, especially with the pick where it's not even the same. It's not the same.
And Duggar had buzz. We all spotted him at the Senior Bowl. Nagy's talking about it. We were there at the Senior Bowl. Duggar, he can play. Let's go back. Let's find the film. Let's find out his story. Strange was there at the Senior Bowl. I'm like, oh, there's a guy from Chattanooga.
Very quiet.
He wasn't Ali Marpet. Ali Marpet blew it up in that situation. I was there. We're all talking about Ali Marpet and everything. Strange was just a guy in that situation. So,
All right, Derek, someone asked earlier about your opinion of the Steelers taking Mr. Pickett. So let's bring it on.
Very bad. I said this, on our live show or whatever we were doing yesterday, that there were only 2 quarterbacks that I could have conceivably drafted in the 1st round. And that was Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis. And I thought they would have been in on both of those players. Turns out when given all 3 options, they decided to go for a guy who might be quarterback 4 to me. I mean, Pickett is a 24-year-old who started 50 games and his processing is just super inconsistent. And he doesn't have like particularly great tools, where at least, Willis is kind of inconsistent, but you can sell yourself on the fact that he has like A+ tools across the board. Pickett's more like B-, which is good enough, but not something that you get too excited about. So I just think he caps out as like a very average player, and I'm worried if he's ever going to get there. So not that taking a quarterback in the first round is a great process in this class in general, but I think even a step beyond that, they took the wrong one. So not a fan.
I'm a fan.
Oh,
I'm
no.
I'm a Pitt alum, so I'm very biased, and I say that outright. One thing I'll say analytically, Pro Football Focus came out with their completion percentage over expected numbers for this draft class, and Pickett was by far and away the guy who was the most accurate relative to the kinds of passes he was attempting. And so I think the NFL was supposedly all about traits, and if they were all about traits, then one would have expected Willis to go a lot higher. And so to me, it speaks to the fact that even with his traits, everything else about him, and maybe some of the needs of some of the teams, they don't view him as the top quarterback in this class. They're very down in this quarterback class completely, which aligns with some of the projections that Football Outsiders put out that I thought really spoke to that. To me, Kenny Pickett has the best accuracy. And the other thing about the Steelers is they think they're competitive. So you want them to stick someone back into the offense, whether it's Trubisky or Pickett, who knows? We'll see. But yeah, to me, Kenny Pickett is the most ready to play right now, and the league thought of him much higher than they thought of Willis and Ritter. Completely. All the Ritter heat was he was a high riser in my draft data, and it's a totally kaput. I'm not sure. I don't think he'll go first. I think Willis will still go first today.
I actually do think Pickett has great accuracy. I will give him that. I just am very concerned about him getting to the right target to be accurate, I guess is my problem. Like, for me, it's just, in how many worlds is he actually better than the guy that's starting ahead of him right now?
That's it. That's what
I don't think very
I think
many.
he's better than in many of them. I mean, yeah, I think it's fair to say that.
But you kind of said it a minute ago, Benjamin. Whether it's Trubisky or whether it's Pickett, that's not a great place to start your springboard with a rookie quarterback. It's like, well, he could be about as good as the guy we just grabbed off the scrap heap. But
it's also about development.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, like these things happen, but last year the Patriots drafted Mac Jones and had Cam Newton on the roster, and we didn't know who was going to start there. Mac Jones was fine. In fact, he was probably the best quarterback last year of the rookies. And so I think we need to be a little bit more tamped down on some of our evaluations post-draft. I think last year a lot of the people on the stream were deriding this Mac Jones pick, and it turns out he might be the best quarterback in the class. It's very early, but still, I think returns on Pickett could be a lot better. And like I said, the Steelers are much more on kind of win now. So,
yeah.
All right, Mike, your loser from the first night.
The Green Bay Packers, who once again did their weird, creepy, tantric denial of Aaron Rodgers' desperate need for a wide receiver. This time, no more Davante Adams. So you let Davante Adams walk, and what do you replace him with? A 3-tech tackle and an off-ball linebacker. Yes, that's how you're going to stay at the top. That's how you're going to keep Aaron Rodgers from just becoming a podcaster, by going out there with off-ball linebacker Quay Walker and 3-tech tackle, good ball player, obviously, and Devontae Wyatt, and a wide receiver core consisting of Sammy Watkins, Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers, Juwan Winfrey, the guy whose name I've forgotten, and whoever you grab in round 2 off the heap.
Randall Cobb, baby.
Oh, they got Randall's there. So Rodgers is okay because his buddy Randall's there, but inexplicable. Now, I know I saw some Packers Twitter people saying there's value in the second round, and we got these guys, and if we picked at the picks we were at, the run had happened. Williams and Olave and all those guys were off the board, so we would not have gotten a first round talent at the bottom of the board. You could trade up, guys. Hey, Packers, you could trade up. You could have traded up. You could have put yourself in position to get the Olave you needed. Maybe the Drake London, although maybe he went too high that you needed. You could have gotten those guys. You chose not to. And I don't understand what your offense is going to look like in 2022 when you're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender.
My only criticism of that is I'm just not a big fan of trading up in general.
Okay.
So I do understand the idea of the value of sticking back, taking guys that you felt were good value at the end of the first round, maybe trading up in the second instead. I don't know, getting the receiver. But you're absolutely right. They need a receiver. They need one.
They need one. And I'm not sure where they're picking today and who's going to be there at that point. I'm looking at my second round right now, and they are down at the 21st pick today.
Yeah.
And then another one at 27. Sky Moore could be gone. Christian Watson could be gone by then, and I don't know who you're taking.
I have 5 wide receivers that I have mocked in the second round. You brought up Sky Moore from Western Michigan, Christian Watson from North Dakota State, George Pickens from Georgia. If they want another Georgia player, they can go 3 for 3 Georgia players.
Be good.
And then I also have Alec Pierce from Cincinnati and John Mechie from Alabama. All options for them. But I think, we'll see. But I think this is something that Packers insiders had said was long in the cards, that they didn't expect them to go and change their tendency. Just like the Eagles didn't break their tendency on linebacker or on cornerback or on safety, the Packers didn't break their tendency on wide receiver.
CCX3 says, I think Ross, Watson, or Pickens are more their taste anyway, but taking Lloyd over Karlaftis is curious. Are you talking about the Packers taking Walker over Karlaftis?
Walker, yeah. Walker over Karlaftis, Walker over Dean.
Yeah.
There's a lot there, but I agree. I mean, if Pickens is sitting there, obviously you get him and you kind of got to win there. Pickens isn't sitting there at the 21st pick tonight. Someone's going to grab him.
My loser is, speaking of trading up and down, my loser was the New Orleans Saints, because between the trade they made with the Eagles before the draft and the trade that they made to move up from 16 to 11, essentially they traded a 2023 first, a 2024 second, and a third, and a fourth this year just to move up from like 19 to 11 to get Chris Olave, who is good, but is he better than Treylon Burks? I mean, I guess he's a different type of player, and Burks sort of duplicates what you already have with Michael Thomas, but it's a lot of draft capital to give up to move up. So you have to, and one of the things we talk about in the analytics world is, if there's one lesson to learn from the draft, it's that you are not as sure as you think you are. And you are not as good at scouting as you think you are. And you've got to price in the variability. And I just feel like the Saints trading all that draft capital to move up 8 spots is like, you're really taking a gamble that you are just way smarter than everyone else.
Got to compare, Olave and Jahan Dotson from Penn State, the wide receiver that the Commanders took with that same pick. I think that'll be an interesting comparison to make for the rest of their careers, because like you said, I think you're spot on. You don't know as much as you think you do.
I think they were really, really upset they couldn't go up and get Charles Cross. I think that's what they really wanted to do with these picks. And then it just kind of came to a point where they were like, well, the receivers are starting to come off the board. We have to trade for Olave. I don't really like trading up for him that high, even though I like Olave. I'm honestly more pressed they took Trevor Penning. I don't think the Penning pick was very good at all. I don't know if it really solves anything for them this year. Because the whole thing with Penning, even if you like him, he's kind of a project, right? But the way they're building this team and going about things, they seem to think they're ready to compete. It just seems like an odd mix of player and
I mean, I think they're ready to compete. I'm just to give you a little preview of Football Outsiders projections. The system likes Winston. The system doesn't think the offense is going to fall off as much as you expect. The system thinks the defense is still reasonably good. The Saints are still competitive.
The system thinks they're playing the Falcons and Panthers 4 times, so
they are playing the Falcons.
I don't know. They were so hard to watch last year. Even not as much with James, but so hard without him. I think even Andy Dalton. I wish they had a better option with upside at quarterback. We'll see if they let Jameis really.
I feel like Winston is the option with upside. Winston.
How much upside? How much?
I think to me,
except for the 130 interceptions year, which
I think Winston has
out on his history.
I think Winston has pretty decent upside. The thing, the biggest problem to me with the offense last year was they couldn't open it up at all. They didn't have anybody who could take the top off. And trading up everything they did for Olave, that's one thing. But what Olave can do is he can open up the field. He can take the top off. And I think Jameis Winston truthfully needs a player like that to make his entire shtick as a quarterback work. So I don't really love the value of going up for Olave, but it kind of solves the problems they had on offense, especially if Michael Thomas is coming back and going to be what we assume that he is going to be again.
They need another wide receiver too.
They still need another one. Absolutely. Yeah. Their room is bad.
You guys aren't buying Marquez Callaway?
No, I don't think we're good. I think we saw that last year. Yeah.
Michael Thomas has been watching $28 million contracts fly off the board this year, by the way.
Will he play?
He has been keeping his eye on that. My commercial that the New Orleans Saints are $257 million in expenditures for next year. If the cap was the same, they'd already be $30 million over the cap for next year. That they did all of their voodoo that they could possibly do this year, and they're going to be running out of voodoo next year to do these things. So what would they really have needed? Some third-round picks, some mid-round picks, et cetera, et cetera. That's all the stuff that they've been trading away to do this. So on the one hand, if you say they got two good players to solve two problems, they potentially opened up 2 or 3 holes they will not be able to fill in future years.
Everyone thinks that the Rams are the F them picks team. It's actually the Saints.
Yeah.
The Rams still make lots of picks. The Saints don't. The Saints are the real F them picks team.
The Rams trade their top picks for veterans. The Saints trade their mid-round picks for top picks just to move up 3 spots.
Right. And then pay everybody until 2029.
Yeah. All right. Let's go over the best available players for tonight for rounds 2 and rounds 3. I'm going to bring up the best available players according to the FO40. And Ben, you can comment here about where Grinding the Mocks may have some of these players, but these are the best players left from the FO40. Malik Willis is our top guy left. I mean, I think we're all really surprised he didn't go in the first round. Nakobe Dean, who I know Derek absolutely loves. Logan Hall, who we also wrote about. Trey McBride, that's the tight end, who's the number 1 tight end by far in our new Travis projections.
Yep.
David Ojabo, really talented edge rusher with an injury. And then safety Jalen Pitre, defensive tackle Perrion Winfrey, linebacker Chad Muma from Wyoming, Boye Mafe, who's an edge rusher from Minnesota, and Jaquan Brisker, who is a safety from Penn State. Those are our best players available.
Yeah, Malik Willis is definitely the top player left on my board as well. I had him as the 15th or 16th player in the draft. So, you look at who's picking. I mean, I think Tennessee is a decent spot for him. I think it potentially could be an upgrade. I think, they could draft any of the other quarterbacks as well. But yeah, a lot of these guys were all second-round guys for me. Boye Mafe is probably the next highest player on my list. I had Nakobe Dean at 36. Logan Hall at 39. I had David Ojabo at 42. So these are all kind of second-round guys that are left. So this makes sense. This is a solid group of players. I would expect Willis to be the first, but maybe he falls further than we even think. I'm not sure what his floor is at this point. I think we're all kind of, searching for answers there.
Seahawks pick back-to-back, I think, 8th and 9th tonight.
Oh, yeah, good call. Good call. I think
they got to come away with one, or somebody's going to call them.
Seahawks rational.
Give it to me. The Panthers call them.
They either got to come away with a quarterback or they got to trade for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the Seahawks being rational is another storyline here that's really interesting. I think people were expecting them to do something really, really crazy, and everyone said, Charles Cross, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Charles Cross was my 8th-ranked player, so, we'll see what happens, but maybe there's a little bit of a change there in Seattle. We'll see. I'm excited for them.
It's interesting how far Nakobe Dean can fall. I realize he's undersized, but God, there's such a history of undersized linebackers. And I tweeted it out after Derek wrote Film Room about him. He's not far off in size from like Derek Brooks or Eric Kendricks.
He's like the same size as Levante David.
I mean, he's slightly smaller, maybe an inch, maybe 5 or 6 pounds. Like he's not, he's the exact same size as Zach Thomas was.
Right.
And my thing with Dean is you would think a smaller player like this, if they're going to, have problems, you're going to be seeing them just getting, a guard is going to get their hands on him and just completely clobber him, take him out of the play.
Right.
That happens every now and then, but not at all to the degree that should be having him falling. Truthfully, I think the way that he actually bends and fights through contact is pretty remarkable for a guy his size. So I think it's kind of absurd that he's fallen this far. To me, he's the best linebacker in the class. A little shocking to me that he went. I mean, I guess just in terms of body type, it's not that shocking that Walker and Lloyd went ahead of him, but just in terms of film, I think Dean was the best player.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And somebody's going to be very happy when they get Dean.
Yeah.
So fast, such great speed.
Yeah, like when he triggers, that dude is he's scary. He's a scary little missile man.
So we also have a list of the top fantasy players from our FO Fantasy 40, and very few fantasy players went. It was a chunk of the night where all the wide receivers got taken and the 2 veteran wide receivers got traded, and then Pickett got taken, and then that was that. That was pretty much that for fantasy-oriented players. So there's lots of fantasy-oriented players left over for tonight, starting with all the running backs. No running back went in the first round. So Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller. Then we have Malik Willis. Then more running backs, James Cook and Tyler Beatty. Then Trey McBride, the tight end. Desmond Ritter. George Pickens as the best left wide receiver, although some people may be partial to Sky Moore. Yeah. And then Greg Dulcich, the UCLA tight end with the great mustache. So the question is, like, who's going to take a running back? Like, looking at the top teams that have picks today, I'm like, I mean, Houston Texans. Maybe, but like Houston has so many other needs that why would they take a running back, right? And like, you know, Tampa doesn't really need one. Minnesota, Tennessee doesn't need one. The Giants don't. Jets, you know, they have Michael Carter from last year. Bears don't. Seattle doesn't really need one. Colts definitely do not need one.
Please, Falcons take one. That would be amazing.
Falcons are like the Houston Texans. They have a zillion needs. Yeah. Why would they take a running back? I mean, unless someone trades up, like, you could definitely be going into like, I don't know, like the second half of the second round before you start talking about a running back.
It might be the same way at tight end too. I think this was the first time in history there were no running backs or tight ends taken in the first round. And as much as I love the talent at tight end, I love McBride, I like Dulcich. There's about a dozen other guys out there. I don't know for whom it's a priority right now of all these other teams that are going to be grabbing those defenders that fell, grabbing quarterbacks, and grabbing receivers like Moore and Pickens.
Yeah, I have Breece Hall at 43 in my expected draft position rankings. So it still thinks that this is the way. I was a little surprised. You know, you had big time mock drafts. Daniel Jeremiah had the Buffalo Bills going.
Everybody thought the Bills were going to take a running back.
They traded up for a cornerback.
That's a meme. Eagles are to linebackers as Bills are to running backs.
Right. It's a meme. And we put them in the mock draft because we know we get engagement from Bills fans. Bills fans, that's what we're doing. I literally put the running back in there. If I don't mock you a running back, I mention a running back in the first sentence to get you guys worked up so you'll share it. That's what
do you guys think about the Lions for Breece Hall?
They don't pick for a while. They'd have to trade up for him. They pick 46th. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That would be a lot of investment in second round running backs, though, because they already have DeAndre Swift. They had Jamal.
They still have Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams, who's fine. So I don't know. That would be a surprise to me. And I saw someone else mention the Dolphins. They don't pick till like, I don't know, 100 and whatever, and they only have like very few picks in this class. So I doubt they take a running back as well. But yeah, I think you were saying, yeah, I think. To me, I think it's Houston potentially, or maybe they're Atlanta.
Brian Knowles brought up the Dolphins. They got Edmonds. They got somebody else at running back in the offseason.
They have Mostert now, I think.
Mostert and Chase Edmonds.
Yeah. And they need. I mean, they could do it. They need offensive line help. I don't necessarily see the Dolphins doing it. It probably is I could see it being the Bills in the second round. I think that's something.
It could be the Bills, but the Bills with 57, not the Bills with 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, CCX3 says the logic for the Lions is that they might be a bit out on Swift. I think Hall might be more, maybe Campbell wants to break kneecaps. Hall might be more his kind of runner.
Right, you take Brian Robinson later, too, and just if all he wants to do is run between the tackles and clobber people.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. These running backs, you know, we feel like they're going to have fantasy value, and they probably are. But there aren't a lot of really obvious places for them right now. And they're all probably going to be in timeshares. Unless there's an injury to somebody, I can't foresee any of these rookie running backs being starters.
Houston. In Houston, they would be.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they'd have to compete with Marlon Mack. So, yeah, probably. Brian Knowles says the Dolphins got Mostert, but they're also importing the 49ers offense, and Shanahan disciples need their comforting third-round running backs.
Who won't play.
Therapy back.
Isaiah
Yeah.
Spiller to the 49ers.
The front office is still there, so
Dolphins,
it's not like a wholesale change in the draft philosophy is afoot there.
And the Dolphins would have to trade up, right? Because the Dolphins
Yes.
don't have a pick now until the 4th round.
Yes.
And so many of these guys, like Batty, like Ricard White, who I like a lot, those are the smaller guys. The bigger guys, like Tyler Algier out of BYU, they're all rotation committee backs anyway. So, you're going to have fantasy value. It's going to be your daily fantasy. Oh, he's getting the start this week. He's hot. Or it's a keeper league type of thing. Not, he comes in and gets a Jonathan Taylor role right away.
Yeah. You'll have to look for who's in the position like Javonte Williams, where they get drafted by the team, where the veteran they're sharing with is going to be a free agent.
Well, Melvin's going back.
And then
Melvin
Gordon gets signed back anyway.
And he said that
I'm a bitter person who owns Javonte Williams in a keeper league or anything. But
Melvin Gordon, he said that the fantasy football people, he hears them and he doesn't care.
I am a bitter Javonte Williams owner, I will fully admit.
Worth. Okay.
The Dolphins can grab an alumnus from Mostert's school in round 7. Where did Mostert go?
Fullback,
to school?
Purdue.
Yeah.
Purdue.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. We almost got through this without a Purdue reference.
We already did.
We did. We had Karlaftis.
We've made it this whole way without me talking about EJ Perry. So
I love fullback. By the way, I think they got a fullback already. I can't remember his name, but I'm certain the Dolphins grabbed the fullback.
They signed Ingold, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Ingold. Yeah, Alkin Gold.
Yes. There we go. Ingold. Yes.
Good fullback movement this offseason. Ingold, and then Jacob Johnson replaced Ingold with the Raiders. And so if you're looking for a team to draft a fullback later today, the New England Patriots need one.
It sounds like something they would do. So
it does. Doesn't it totally sound like something they would do?
Yep.
They're going to totally take Matt Araiza with the 3rd round pick that they'd added from the
Oh my God.
I mean, this might be a hot take, but Matt Araiza might not be the first punter taken.
Oh,
I know that's
going to be
amazing,
Stonehouse.
is the talk that he's
Jordan
a generational
Stout.
punter, and that he might not even that some teams have. What's the name of the other guy?
Jordan Stout from
Higher
Penn
on
State.
their boards.
Penn
Yeah.
State.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I'd be surprised too, but maybe he's just too good. He's misunderstood.
Patrick Seeley says the Patriots are not going fullback this year. Patrick, from your mouth to Bill Belichick's ear, I can only hope.
We thought they weren't going guard in the 1st round. That was a 3rd round value, but they did. So anything's possible. That's the draft.
They're going to go linebacker who converts to fullback.
Special teamer for the next 12 years.
Yeah. All right, folks, that does it for our NFL draft week night 1 2022 recap. Thank you all for watching the show. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for asking questions during the chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Ben Robinson, for giving us all kinds of good grinding the mocks data throughout the whole draft season. Derrik and Mike, thank you for all your awesome Tuesday draft shows. Splash Play will be on at 2:30 with more round 1 breakdown. And then next week, we'll be back on Thursday with off-season stuff, probably breaking down the rest of the draft and what it means for the rest of the off-season and the remaining free agents. And until then, everybody enjoy night 2 and day 3 of the draft, and we will see you next week. So